Hello, dear friends. This issue was a long time coming, but has now been confirmed by experts. Opinion piece. The economist's Achilles heel. Global chip shortage threatens the system. Intel to increase chip manufacturing in Europe. Semiconductor shortfall won't be solved until 2022. Europe just had the hottest summer in history. Gold price suffers sharpest daily drop in a month. Home foreclosures hit highest in 4 years. Bitcoin plummets 17% amid protests in El Salvador. Bitcoin plummets on day El Salvador legalizes its use as a currency. George Soros says BlackRock's China investments will lose money. US caught between a rock and a hard place to raise debt limit. China's economic growth has generated more billionaires than the US. Taliban in government vows to eradicate Islamic State from Afghanistan. Let's start. Could the chip shortage become the Achilles heel of the global economy? For more than a year now, the world economy has been facing a growing shortage of chips, and manufacturers have been unable to supply them. Analysts believe that the problem is far from being solved and will continue to have a direct impact on consumers' wallets, according to Sputnik. A chip is a small piece of the semiconductor material containing multiple integrated circuits that performs numerous functions in computers and electronic devices. An integrated circuit, also known as a chip or microchip, is a small structure of semiconductor material, usually silicon, with a surface area of a few square millimeters on which electronic circuits are manufactured, generally by photolithography, and which is protected inside a plastic or ceramic encapsulation. The encapsulation has appropriate metallic conductors to make a connection between the integrated circuits and printed circuit. Demand. The worldwide shortage of chips became evident in the second half of 2020, and several factors caused it. The demand for computer technology worldwide has grown in the last 5 years with the increased use of artificial intelligence and the emergence of cryptocurrency mining. Thus, in the last 2 years, the capacity of its production has been overwhelmed. During the crisis, the need for electronics for cloud services has added to this demand, and the sale of computers has increased. Other factors that also played a role include several drafts in Asia that led to disruptions in chip factories. Apple switched from Intel processors to proprietary processors, and the recovery of the flow of chip orders from automakers. A bottleneck has formed with the companies controlling the market because the largest manufacturer, US-based Intel, only produces chips for its own needs, while Samsung, TSMC, and several smaller companies fall short of global demand. Who loses the most? The automotive sector is one of the hardest hit by the chip shortage. Manufacturers have announced price increases of 10% for high-tech chips and 20% for less advanced chips. The market share of semiconductors for the automotive industry is only 10% of the global semiconductor market. Experts have noted that chips also became very expensive due to the boom in cryptocurrency mining in the first half of 2021, computer video graphics cards, and other sectors. Therefore, the shortage of chips has directly affected the pocket of buyers of cars, computers, and game consoles. Analyst Alexei Fomichev believes that the chip deficit will not be definitively resolved until mid to late 2022. In addition, he asked to learn from the lesson of the crisis in this sphere, that excessive concentration of production and lack of alternatives to regular suppliers is dangerous. All this leads analysts to predict that the chip shortage will not be solved quickly, nor will its impact on the world economy. Economy. U.S. Congress caught between a rock and a hard place on raising the debt limit. Democrats and Republicans will begin what could become a monumental game of chicken this month over raising the government's borrowing limit as Congress tries to avoid a historic debt default. Biden asks Congress for $6.4 billion for Afghan refugee resettlement. The President Biden has asked Congress to fund transportation, screening, and full resettlement resources for Afghan refugees waiting to go to the U.S. Gold suffers sharpest daily drop in a month. Gold futures fall Tuesday with their steepest daily drop in about a month, pushing prices back below the key $1,800 mark as the dollar strengthens and treasury yields rise. Workers are changing jobs more often and demanding higher wages. More U.S. workers are changing jobs and demanding higher wages as the labor market continues to recover from the downturn, according to a survey released Tuesday by the New York Federal Reserve. Events that could shake markets in September. After a summer in which stocks have reached a seemingly endless streak of record highs, September brings a series of monetary and political events that could shake investors out of their complacency. Fight over remote work. A legal battle over telecommuting is brewing between U.S. college administration committed to face-to-face classes and some professors with disabilities. Experts want it's a precursor to what awaits employers who order staff back to the office. China and Russia. George Soros says BlackRock's China investments will lose money. Investor George Soros has warned that BlackRock's billion-dollar investment in China would be a mistake, likely to lose the manager's clients' money, eventually affecting the US and other democracies, according to an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. China's economic growth has generated more billionaires than in the US. 800 million Chinese have been lifted out of poverty, but there are still 600 million living on $150 a month. During the 10th meeting of the Central Finance Committee, the need to strengthen regulation of excessively high incomes and encourage high-profit groups and enterprises to return more to society to ensure common prosperity was reiterated. Brics Group approves 28 projects worth more than $2 billion. Members of the Brics Group, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, signed an agreement on Tuesday on 28 different projects with a budget of more than $2.07 billion. Russia, China trade turnover soars by 30% in 2021. The trade turnover between Russia and China from January to August 2021 has increased by 29.5%, reaching $88.997 billion. Russia is not ready to recognize cryptocurrencies. Russia is not ready to recognize bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies because equating cryptocurrency with money would damage the country's financial system, said Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of the Russian president. Europe. Home repossessions reach highest figure in 4 years. Foreclosures for sale initiated in Spain soared in the second quarter of the year to 3,243 interventions, up to 253.2% from a year earlier, and the highest figure since the first quarter of 2017. European economy grows. The Eurozone economy has recovered more strongly and faster than expected from last winter's confinements. During the second quarter of 2021, GDP jumped 14.3% in the Eurozone and 13.8% in the European Union compared to the same period last year. Intel to invest up to 80 billion euros to boost chip capacity. Intel Corp said it may invest up to 80 billion euros in Europe over the next decade to boost the region's chip capacity, and will open its semiconductor plant in Ireland for automakers. Europe has just had its warmest summer. Europe has had its warmest summer on record this year, although only by a small margin from the previous two highest temperatures in June-August. British government raises taxes. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has plans to raise taxes on workers, employers and some investors to try to solve a health and welfare funding crisis, angering some members of his ruling party by breaking his election pledges. The European Union will not change its identity for Afghan migrants. The European Union is not ready for a repeat of the 2015 migration crisis. This was stated by Slovenian Prime Minister Janez Janša, referring to the possible wave of displaced Afghans. His Hungarian counterpart, Viktor Orban, stressed that migrants could not displace residents or erode European identity. Brussels wants to impose a daily fine on Poland. The European Commission wants to impose a fine on Poland for each day of delay in implementing European rulings on the independence of the judiciary. It has asked the European Court of Justice to do so on the basis of existing precedents. Germany secretly used spy software. German federal agencies secretly acquired the spy program software Pegasus, developed by the Israeli company NSO Group, to spy journalists, activists, politicians, and even leaders of other countries. The newspaper Die Zeit reported. Afghanistan. Taliban appoint interim government for Afghanistan. The relatively unknown Mullah Hassan Akhund will be the new head of Afghanistan interim government, a leader who is blacklisted by the United Nations along with some 20 key ministries. A government in which there are no women and whose members belong to the Islamist formation. Islamic Sharia law will be enforced in Afghanistan. The ruling Taliban vowed to eradicate the Islamic State from Afghanistan. In recent years, Taliban Mullah Neda Mohammad has fought both the Afghan government and his Islamist rivals in the Islamic State. Appointed governor after the Taliban came to power, he now promises that the jihadists will be eradicated from Afghanistan. Taliban suppressed protests in Afghanistan in support of the resistance. Several localities in Afghanistan experienced protests on Tuesday in support of the resistance against the Taliban and to criticize the military support of Pakistan to the Islamist formation. The protests resulted in the arrest of demonstrators by the Taliban. NATO activates response force for Afghan relocation. NATO is providing support for evacuation operations from Afghanistan and relocation among allies and the international community, with its response force, Allied Military Headquarters, said Monday. Russia's military maneuvers in Central Asia. The opening ceremony of the Border 2021 exercises of the Collective Security Treaty Organization's Rapid Collective Deployment Forces took place Tuesday at the Kyrgyz Defense Ministry's Edelweiss Training Center. Iran accumulates more enriched uranium and the UN loses monitoring capacity. Iran continues to enrich uranium to levels close to that needed to make atomic weapons and to block international inspections, to the point that the International Atomic Energy Agency warns of its increasing inability to verify the Iranian nuclear program. Libya releases Muammar Gaddafi's son. Libyan authorities announced the release of Muammar Gaddafi's son and several people close to the former dictator, a move that appears to show efforts towards national reconciliation in a country eaten away by divisions. Spanish America. Mexico decriminalizes abortion. Mexico's Supreme Court ruled unanimously Tuesday that criminalizing abortion is unconstitutional, as parts of the U.S. enact stricter laws against the practice. Bitcoin fails on its first day in El Salvador. A failure in Chivo wallet, the electronic wallet launched by the Salvadoran government, forced President Nayib Bukele to explain the mistake in his networks. The application, which took longer than expected to be available, allows making and receiving payments in Bitcoin and dollars and can only be used by Salvadorans. Street protests in Salvador against Bitcoin. More than 1,000 people marched in the capital of El Salvador to protest the adoption of Bitcoin as a legal tender, amid an initial deployment of systems to support the digital currency. The value of Bitcoin plummeted 17%. Bitcoin plummeted on the same day that El Salvador legalized its use as a legal tender. The Bitcoin plummeted on Tuesday and lost 30% of its value. At one point, it registered a 17% drop, but then recovered a bit and traded at $46,783, $9.41 less. Ethereum also suffered a fall, and its value stood at $3,372. The World Bank will not help El Salvador. The World Bank reiterated on Tuesday its refusal to offer technical assistance to El Salvador in the process of implementing Bitcoin as legal tender, considering that there are environmental and transparency deficiencies. President Bukele announces state purchase of 150 Bitcoins more. The President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, announced the purchase of 150 Bitcoins and now totals 550 acquired by the state in this Central American nation, where a law that supports the circulation of this cryptocurrency alongside the dollar has already entered into force. The government of El Salvador has warned that it will sanction businessmen who do not accept Bitcoin transactions according to the Consumer Protection Law. Panama promotes Bitcoin and Ethereum. Panama unveiled a cryptocurrency law in draft form. As in El Salvador, Panama wants to make Bitcoin and Ethereum more popular as payment method. Panama's lawmakers also want to support the use of blockchain in the public sector, as well as using this technology in its banking sector. Bolivia develops smart potatoes. Climate change has forced several Bolivian potato farmers to combine the knowledge of their grandparents with climate-smart practices to also rescue native varieties of the tuber that have the ability to adapt to cold and drought. The disappearance of Bolivia's second largest lake has changed the ecosystem, the economy, and the way of life of hundreds of indigenous Uru people who have lived along the Popo even before the Inca Empire. Curious. Is there such a thing as a devil's advocate? Trevor Bell, the first Advocatus Diaboli of the Noosa Satan's Temple, is currently leading a litigation challenging religious teaching in Queensland schools and the Christian dominance over Australian government and society. The case now in the High Court of Brisbane has attracted international attention for obvious reasons. The law in Australia allows public schools to devote 1 hour a week to religious instruction and children of a particular religion, specified by their parents, to join the class while the rest do not. 9,000 abuse lawsuits hit New York courts. A change in New York law made it possible for more than 9,000 abuse allegations, including high-profile Catholic priests previously blocked by a state statute of limitations, which sets strict guidelines on how long victims have to file a lawsuit. Australian ducks mimic human speech. Australian musk ducks are able to mimic human speech, according to a new study by a scientist in Australia, according to the Royal Society's journal, Philosophical Transactions B. Messages. Poet Dog message. The angels of God have always been there. We do not see them when our senses remain closed outside the plane in which they operate. The more materialism intensifies, the more they are captured in the flaming welts of appetite and cannot perceive anything outside of it. That is changing now. The divine force is acting upon human consciousness, and the only way it happens is through the angelic realm. Study the trends that are taking place in human affairs. Some parties becoming increasingly indignant and dysfunctional. The rest are reasonable people who have taken it upon themselves to care for the family unit, thank their creator, and try to live a dignified life. Even the most intelligent among us are creating angry without knowing what is going on. People are turning against each other irrationally and without any reason. People's fury is being artificially stoked by the fire of the hellish realm. The return of the blue kachina. Physical reality is breaking down, so to speak. It is becoming the dream world. Whether we realize it or not, we are in control. But the moment it happens, it is normal insanity. Many of the things that happen today would have been unthinkable 50 years ago, but they make sense in today's reality. The bridge is the logical narrative from one world to another. No longer is the bridge necessary, linking the two worlds, pulling from both sides. In reality, they are not separate worlds, just two generally different ways of looking at the same world. The two worlds can mesh, making more dreamlike things in waking reality. This is happening on a massive scale with social and political events, and we are experiencing it individually as well. If you introduced dream elements into your waking reality, you are strengthening the bridge to the dream world just as you do when you go to bed. Close your eyes and start concentrating on dream thoughts. We do this every day and call it sleep. You could have the same experience while you are awake, although if your mind is not strong, it might take you feel a little crazy. That's why the transition is very slow. You need to change everything, not just one aspect of waking life. The chaos side wants to distract you with endless dramas so you don't get there. The natural state of information is misinformation or noise. But some news is misinforming, to lead you in the wrong direction. Agents of chaos wake if something is promoted or popularized. Explore what is outside your usual perspective. Do things you wouldn't normally do. Be honest with the people and things around you. The more transparent you are, the more you connect with your perceptions. Make your thoughts and desires physical in a small way. Symbolize your inner reality in your physical reality. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.